Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wealth Preservation Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Josh Saunders. Josh, how's it going in Texas there?
Awesome. I'm here sitting in beautiful South Texas in Corpus Christi, where it is hot, muggy, and windy as always. We have a pretty cool show lined up for those of our listeners that are real estate aficionados. We're going to talk real estate and multifamily real estate today, so I hope you are ready to listen. It's going to be good stuff.
Yes, but first, we're going to go into Lane Kawaoka's story before we go into what he does on the real estate side, he takes an education-heavy approach to the real estate business. But first, we want to tell his story on how he was on what he would call the linear path. Is that what you call it in your bio? You're on
kind of a boring linear path, as some people call this.
Yes, he is definitely more educated than I am. So Lane has a master's degree, very smart dude, and he walked away to go do something entrepreneurial, and we want to find out what he did. So Lane, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Aloha.
Awesome. Yeah. So how is it over there in Hawaii?
It's we can't leave our houses because we're all scared of coronavirus out here. But when it looks in my window, it's 80 degrees and sunny and nice breeze, trade wind breeze, 15 miles, 20 miles an hour breeze.
Well,
in the shade.
I love the memes of people that draw the line in the sand and they're laying on one side of it and it says it's okay to be because they're exercising in the water, but if you're on the other side of the line, you can't be at the beach.
Yeah, we're always moving, either going from or going to,
Always.
Well, I here in California also can't go outside, but it's because it's raining ash outside and everything, it looks like the apocalypse. So, I kind of feel silly like doing a podcast like, well, it looks like the world is ending outside of my window, but let's talk about real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lane, let's kind of dive into your story. Kind of give us, kind of your bio and background, and then we'll kind of dive into these questions about how you got started, to where you're at today.
Yeah. So currently today we operate over 4,000 units that we own. Me and my partners, we kind of work together to find apartment buildings and mobile home parks, and we find good deals on them. We bring in investors, and then we operate them today. But didn't always do that. Started my first rental property back in 2009. But, up until that point, I was kind of groomed just like any other boring kid out there who was told to go to school, study hard, get a good job, and work at that job for 40 years. And that's what I call the linear path, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
you're gonna get that 3% pay increase every year, and you just keep chugging along, right? 401k and the healthcare benefits. That's
right.
that's the sweet life.
Husband,
right.
Wife, white picket fence, 2.5 kids, the whole 9 yards, right? The dog.
Right. Buy the house to live in, which I don't believe in. Invest in your 401k. None of us do any of that kind of type of nonsense. It's all a sort of an engineered system to have us work for the rest of our lives, right? If we all bought real estate, we wouldn't have anybody out there to do our work,
That is true.
That is true.
Well, let's go back to you as a young kid, real quick. Did you have an entrepreneurial spirit as a young kid? Were you the kid who was peddling candy on the school bus, or were you tell us a little bit more about that, and where did you see yourself going career-wise, when you were young?
Yeah, my parents didn't own rental properties, very entrepreneurial. They had, college degrees, but, I was always told not to do that type of stuff, right? Like, don't buy a house and have people live in it. They'll screw it up. You don't want to do that. And then, of course, like a good little kid, I just kind of listened and followed the directions until I turned 20, right? And I tried it out on my own. But for most of my life, I didn't have the people around me, the peers or like the mentors to kind of follow down this path. But I did remember, not that you did say that, I did sell these candies that I made to all the rich kids at school. So there was a little bit of that. But I just kind of worked hard. My first jobs were pretty labor intensive, and it was for $7 an hour, and I was like, you get done with a full day's work and it's you made $30-40. And it's like,
Yes.
man, that was freaking hard. Like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
How could I have something making money when I'm not working?
Yeah, yeah. But at that point, it was just like, no, unless people tell you how to do this, you're thinking the best way to doing it is going to school, get a good job, get the six-figure salary, and that stuff works, right? Like it works. Like it works for my parents, it works for everybody else. I call it the white knuckle method, right? You just kind of save, and no coffee, save, super frugal. It works, right? But it takes freaking forever, and I just think it's not the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it is like it does kind of seem, and not to I don't want to make it sound like I'm making fun of those people, but when people get very adamant about like, oh well, you can't buy the expensive coffee, you gotta you always gotta buy the cheap meal and stuff like that. It's like, or we could prioritize like our expenses and make a little bit more money, and then we can enjoy. I mean, it looks like you're not drinking the cheapest coffee right there. I mean, it seems like I might want to go get coffee after this.
I have one of those fancy Vermuso machines that like spins this orb. So the pods are kind of expensive, but it's still cheaper than anybody going to Starbucks getting a drip. Right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
starting out, like that was my thing, was like I was super frugal. Like I have a section on my website of all the cheapo things I would do. Like I would take a shower at work, so I don't have to take a shower. I would go to, like, you've ever been to Mod Pizza?
Oh yeah.
You guys got Mod Pizza? Yeah,
Oh
like
yeah.
it's a little secret, but like you can go there and you can get like a big salad, and you can get all the fixins on top of it, and pretty much get like you can feed yourself for a whole week. A single guy could feed himself for a whole week for like $15. Nobody gets a salad at Mod Pizza, which is why this is still like a loophole. But like I would do all this type of stuff in my early 20s to like save a lot of money. And that was the secret was I put that to investing. Like it sounds really obvious, but that was like my claim to fame initially.
Gotcha. So you just did like the whole live cheap and, hopefully I'll make something better someday. And, maybe by the time I'm 60, I'll have saved enough money to retire, or maybe I'll get lucky and retire at age 55 or something like that. Right. Like that was the kind of the mantra.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know anything better, right? Like a lot of people, they during college, I got into a lot of like the personal finance blogs of like, oh, this is the 1% credit card, 2%. You do some travel hacking with the points, but all that's a waste of time and a waste of money. The way I look at it these days, I mean, it helps. That stuff helps you to build capital to buy your first investments, and
Right.
that's the thing about real estate. The type of investing I do is not like wholesaling, flipping, any of that nonsense. Like that stuff is labor intensive, it's more active. I'm a more passive investor. I use the money from my day job and to invest passively, to do as little as I could, because my highest and best use at the time was just being a little good kid at work and making my salary there.
Gotcha. So let's kind of step back. So you're in high school and, you probably studied, worked really hard, and then you got into college, right? Where'd you end up going to college at? It's not really a big deal where, but
Yeah, I went to University of Washington.
Okay.
Why I did that, I don't know. I mean, I think I must have been good at math and science when I was like 8 or 9. So parents said I should be an engineer, and then I was like, all right, well, let me go Google. Well, they didn't have Google back then, but at some point I looked at some kind of like ranking where like, oh, top paid degrees, and like, oh damn it, I'm gonna do that, engineer, right? Because the doctor, lawyer, you need more schooling for that. Seems too much of a pain. This engineering thing seems to be like the minimum effective dose, right? The least amount of work to get the most amount of pay, the quickest amount of time. So I went to the mindset of just, all right, I'm gonna do all these like math and science classes and get an engineering degree. Definitely not following any kind of passion. I don't really believe in that nonsense, following a passion. Goodness gracious.
Right. Yeah.
Wait. I mean, Josh and I have said this before. Like when people are like, "Oh, do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life." It's like not true. You're always going to work. I mean, even if you love it, it's still work. I mean, the whole like, well, if you're passionate about it, then it's easy. It's like, no, it's still work. It's just it's work that you're willing to do.
My spin on that is like you need to like work your butt off in the beginning, create some kind of skill, and you don't develop a skill unless you kind of work at something. Then figure out how you can parlay that skill into your passion at that point.
Gotcha.
But these yo-yos are running around without any skills. They're trying to find their passion.
Yeah. Well, yeah, before we knock like school too hard, like, we're kind of throwing it under the bus, but, what are there any skills that you thought you kind of picked up during your time that made you like either think analytically or anything like that, or do you think it was just all of it was just a total waste?
Yeah, I talk a lot of crap about my school. My diplomas are up there, upside down. I do say that all the time, but it did two things for me. Like I did industrial engineering first for undergrad, and that's all about like being efficient. Yeah, it's about like working for the man and putting the Boeing factory in this layout so that they can increase their throughput. But it's very like, in your mind, you can apply that to any kind of business. And, from our apartment deals to buying a rental property, managing teams of people, it's all transferable skills.
Right.
And then secondly, the degree got me a job that paid more than 60 grand out of college, and I was able to save most of that paycheck to put to investments. So
gotcha.
I can't good for that.
Yeah. So let's talk about you discovering like the need to shift from that linear path. Like what I guess tell us the story of like when it finally clicked for you that it was just like, hey, I've got a master's, I'm on a good trajectory, and it's still not where I want to be. Like I think I could do better.
Yeah, so I went out there and I started working as a construction supervisor. And for those people who are civil engineers and construction, you travel a lot. So I'm working this job. I've got a crew of guys who are like 67 years old that are a complete headache to work with. This is like the 20-year-old kid who's got the college degree and, trying to work with my foreman. So that's kind of going on in the background. And then I followed the whole dogma of buying your primary residence, which if you live in a place like California or Hawaii, any kind of primary market, I definitely don't think any young person should buy a house to live in, should invest. But I didn't know that at the time. I bought this house and I was only home on Saturdays because I would travel for work the rest of the days. And then I was like, this is stupid. Like, I'm just going to rent this place out. So I called the old landlord and I got a property management firm to manage it out, which is like, this is a thing. Like, it's not like anything special. And I was collecting $2,200 a month in rents, and my mortgage was $1,600 a month. So if you do the math, there's a bit of spread in there. And I was like, hot dang, I'm gonna like do this again and again and again. And this is a lot of beer money. And at the time, I knew nothing about like the 1% rent to value ratio, how to really calculate your cash flow, which we can talk about in the next episode. But I was like, damn it, like this is my way out of the rat race. Yeah, it took me a few years to save up the money for this property, but this money puts more money into my pocket to buy the next one. And what do engineers do but make spreadsheets? So I projected this out the next 3, 4, 5 years. And I was like, damn it, like if I just picked up like 10 plus rentals, which I can do in a reasonable amount of time, under a decade, I can go and fire my boss. So that was, fast forward to three years later, I bought my next property, right? People think it just happened so quick, but in the beginning it's so slow.
Right.
Yeah, it is not an overnight process. But I mean, like when you got the showering at work and the mod pizza salad, I mean, I'm sure you were able to shorten that timeline a little bit.
When I got rid of that place to live in, I just lived on company expenses 100% of the time. Like there'd be weeks there where I would just not even spend $100 out of my own pocket a month. Like it was insane. Like I was doing everything by the book, but I probably should have got fired. Obviously, I not went back to W-2 employment here, so I'm gonna say that. But like I would like travel back, like we would travel, and they deserved it because we would have to travel back out to work on like Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon if we're lucky to get to work on Monday. So I would like leave on Sunday morning, and then I would like obviously once I leave 30 miles away from my home headquarters, I get to eat on the company dime. So the only day I could use my own money would be Saturday. And when I would come home would be Friday or Saturday. So when I would come home, I would get the buffet right before I hit that 30-mile threshold going home. And then I would just intermittent fast before they had intermittent fasting the whole weekend. I wouldn't even eat.
You'd go to Mod Pizza and get like 2 pizzas and be like, hey, I guess going to take one to go, right? I'm outside of my 30 miles and that's my food for the weekend.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
I didn't even have a car. I just used the company car all the time, right?
I dearly, dearly wish I could pick up that lifestyle right now, but with a wife and 2 kids, I don't know if I could convince them to do the buffet salad for a week straight. I can eat the same thing over and over, but I don't know if I can expect the rest of my family to.
Mark, I can attest to that. You can eat the same thing over and over again, even more than I can, and I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Very unexpected superpower.
That drove me, like when I take all these tests, like these personality tests, like the monetize portion always comes up to the top. I'm always thinking like, how am I gonna save or make money?
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Yeah.
So maybe you can go to your guys' kids and be like, hey, Dad, if you go get this mod pizza salad and you eat this for like 4 days, I'm gonna give you $10. See what happens. You might have a winner on your hand.
Well, one of them is 2 weeks old tomorrow, so I may have to work on him a little bit. But the other one, I'll start the training now.
I think you can get Warren to do it. Deal. Yeah, I think you can get Warren to do it.
I mean, Bodie, he's easy. He's eating off his mom right now, so he's cheap.
Yeah, dude, I think if you promised Warren that you'd buy him a new Jeep, he would do that in a heartbeat.
Absolutely, yes. Different color.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, okay. So real quick, you definitely lived the way most people probably ideally want to live, but just don't have the motivation to, right? Like everyone wants to live cheap, but no one wants to actually live cheap. When you started breaking away from the W-2 job, I mean, having a master's degree and everything that you had, I mean, did you have some people kind of push back and be like, Lane, you're nuts. Like, you want to crash and burn? Like, why are you doing this entrepreneurial thing?
Yeah, I mean, I waited a really long time to quit my day job. And I'm a big proponent on not really taking that leap of faith, but like until you absolutely cannot scale your side gig and you're making just way more money, like maybe 2 or 3 or 4x what you're making at your day job. So that's my opinion, because when you're working both things, you're able to create systems in place because you are so stressed for time, because you're burning both ends of the candle. And that helps you run your business better. So that's the camp that I'm in. I think too many people just jump ship and just become entrepreneurs right off the bat. I mean, it's 2020. If you're an entrepreneur on LinkedIn, everybody knows you don't have a job, right? Not cool to be an entrepreneur. I look at it.
That is absolutely a quote. If you're an entrepreneur on LinkedIn, everyone knows you don't have a job.
Yeah. You have a job. Yes.
Awesome. No, that is awesome. I'm absolutely quoting that one. Shoot, I had something I was going to jump into. You said something that triggered something in my head, and I was going to go into it. And I totally, your last quote there threw me off.
Yeah, I mean, you go to LinkedIn, like all the people who have like legit 6-figure salaries, they don't have like the background behind their image, right? It's the people who don't have anything better to do that are like optimizing their LinkedIn profile. Like,
yes, I know.
Talking about sorry, I don't know if you know, Mark. Me and Mark have a financial advising business that we also do. But if I literally in the last month and a half, 2 times a day, I get message up from somebody new about like, hey, we can send you leads for a financial advisor. We've cracked the code on how to get leads on LinkedIn. I'm like, dude.
What kills me is when they say we don't have enough advisors for the amount of clients we have, and I'm like, I 100% doubt that.
That is
because I know a lot of advisors, especially during a pandemic, who are doing nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I work with high net worth clients, so I do the same thing, right? I know who has money and who doesn't. Right?
Yeah.
Real quick, I remember what triggered in my head. You're saying working your side gig until it's about 2 or 3 times X what you're that is kind of an interesting point of creating the scarcity of time forces you to be efficient. right? And I think that is something where I'm going to butcher the actual quote, but someone did tell me something one time where they're like, you will fill a void of time with whatever task you have to do. And it doesn't matter.
I think, right? Something
Yeah.
like that.
And it was, it basically like if you have an hour to do something, 2 hours to do something, 30 minutes to do something, whatever single task you're trying to do, you're probably going to fill up that whole time space. So if you create that scarcity, you will find ways to be more efficient, which I think is a great point. Some people, it's almost like a rush to like, I'm just going to, have faith. If you can dream it, you can do it. And they jump right into it without like you know what? Actually having that consistent actual W-2 money coming in actually pays the bills on the months where I have a downswing.
It's kind of like the premise of like a diamond. Diamond is created under pressure, right? The diamond is the processes and procedures that you create along the way. Without that pressure, you don't create. There's no impetus to create that.
Right. Absolutely. No, and so let me ask you this question. Like, a lot of people think that, everybody's like this overnight success story, and they're like, oh, I bought my first, property on Thursday and I was a millionaire by the next Friday, right? Like, it's not how it works, right? Like, it's like, you're basically like, the joke is I always say is like, you're a 10-year overnight success, right? Like, it takes time. Like, you just don't, nobody, even Facebook took 12 years before they even got close to their IPO. It wasn't like they just started making money like the first Thursday out of the gate. It's a time thing and a consistency thing.
Right. And I do something that's super easy that anybody can do. Like just buy and hold passive real estate that cash flows. And when it's very simple like that, it just takes even more time. Right? Like I bought the first rental property in 2009, and then I bought the next one maybe in 2000, a couple of years later, but I didn't have 11 rentals until 2015.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you do the math. Right?
Yeah. 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 It was like 6 years. I mean, that's not an overnight. That just takes time and a build and being consistent, right? And just keep over and, making the right decisions over and over and over again will eventually lead you to success.
Yeah. And so, I mean, maybe you haven't experienced this because you seem like a pretty calculated dude, right? But when you did start doing this and trying to scale and everything, like, can you tell us a story of like maybe a time where things almost fell apart or the wheels almost came off or like something came up where you're like, yeah, I was not expecting that and this could do me in as a business and I may have to stick with my W-2 job? Like, is there anything like that or were you pretty calculated the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, I just wasn't taking too many risks, right? When you buy a property that the income like well exceeds the expenses, the anticipated expenses, and then some, like you're not taking that much of a risk. And but when you don't take risks, it takes longer. So that was, I mean, I did a lot of stupid things in the beginning that I wish I would have had a mentor to kind of tell me don't do that, like pay off my mortgages faster and like go to a 15-year mortgage. We always do 30-year as long as we can. Things like that. I didn't, or like who to work with. My first syndication deal I went to, that one wasn't good. The guy just ran off with the money, didn't have the network needed. And then I did, I had a lot of evictions through the years. A few of them were pretty big repair bills, like 10 to 20 grand. I actually have like a walkthrough of like the reaction video I did of like, oh God, like this is going to be expensive. But I mean, that happens though, right? But that's why you have cash reserves. But, nothing like, I mean, this is something anybody can do, I think. And it's not, I wasn't taking huge risks.
Yeah. So at what point did you're like, hey, this is looking good enough. I think I can finally ditch my W-2 job. When did that start to seem like it was going to be reality? Was it?
When did you fire your boss?
Yeah. When did you get to fire your boss?
In my head, I was like 3 years into the day job. Once I got my second property, I was like, I was only bringing in maybe $500 passive a month, but I had proof of concept. And that's the big thing. I was like, F these guys. Right? And then I would say a couple years later, I was I got to a point where I was like, I'm probably making more money than my boss when you include all this passive income and all the deductions and everything. And then you get to a point where like you start to realize the matrix where like, you're a senior person to you and then their director on top of that, like they're not there because they're good people or because they want to be there. They're because they're stuck. Because financially, they're stuck. They're doing what everybody else is doing, and they suck financially.
Right.
Right? They may manage the budgets at work, but they can't even figure out their own personal financial situation.
Yep.
Where some kid can buy a rental property, multiply it by a few, and then just kick their butt, right? It has nothing to do with your salary. It's all how much you save and then how much you invest that puts more money into your lock-in.
Yeah. And for the most part, it's not a complicated calculation either. I mean, and in the next episode, I'm sure we will get into some more complicated stuff on how you are very strategic in the real estate game. But from the saving up to buy your first rental property to cash flow it, that is my expenses are here, so my income needs to go here. And if I want to make more money, I've got to shrink this and grow this. Like that's not I don't need my phone calculator to figure out that math.
I think the hardest thing is just getting started, right?
Yeah.
I mean, buying that first property, just having somebody to look over your shoulder and check your numbers and say, yeah, just do it, man. What are you waiting for? And then just saving. There's a barrier to entry in terms of you need 30 grand to buy $100,000 house out in the Midwest, right? Most people can't save $5,000 to save their life.
Right. Yeah. That's true. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
But that's why it's so great, because not everybody can do it.
Yeah.
Right?
So I kind of a more philosophical question, like, why do you think that more people don't do this? I mean, what do you think is that thing that holds them back, or the thing that kind of allows people not? Because really, like you said, it's really simple. It's not complicated.
Yeah, I mean, most people in life can't execute, right? I mean,
yeah, I'd say it's fairly accurate.
Yeah.
It's simple. Just save. You got to save up 20, 30 grand to buy a house. It's a big number. I get it in the beginning, right? I mean, entrepreneur dude, right, with a crazy LinkedIn background cannot save $5 grand. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean, he's got LinkedIn Premium. He's got to pay for. I mean, he's got all those expenses.
Yeah.
The
big thing is, like, you don't have your peer group around you, right? In cubicle land, everybody's talking about the 401k, Roth IRA, all this nonsense. None of them is doing this stuff, and it is a little bit out there in left field. You know, you're buying a house that you may or may not live around, right? Most of my investing has been 100% remote. In the beginning, I don't even visit these properties, right? And if it's more than 100 units, yeah, I'll fly out there, check it out, right? It's worth it. But if it's a one-off property, I'm not going to go look at it. That's a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, kind of touching on and maybe we'll have to cut this for compliance reasons because we are regulated by the financial overlords. But on the 401k and IRA side, like, Josh and I, we tell people all the time, like, have you ever looked at a self-directed IRA, a self-directed 401k, for the entrepreneur? You want to go put a bunch of money in a qualified plan and go buy a piece of real estate? Like, to me, that seems way sexier than, like, hey, buy the S&P.
Okay, so we're talking about firing your boss, and kind of how many times did you write your either resignation letter or your Jerry Maguire like style, like, I'm out of here, darn the man, I'm out? Like, did you ever write that letter in your head?
Yeah, I mean, initially my first jobs was like with a private company, and it was pretty high stress. Actually, it helped me build a lot of the business systems I use today personally. So
Sure.
Again, like the college degree, there were some good things that came out of it. But I eventually kind of went to easier jobs, like more public sector, government type of jobs after, better quality of life, which kind of extended my life as a W-2 employee, because I didn't do too much at those jobs, and they provided pretty good benefits.
Right.
And I enjoyed the people I worked with.
Sure.
Too. So I did that for quite a bit longer as I continued to build the real estate empire at that point.
Yeah. On a quick side note, I know some people that still work their state jobs and they have some side hustles, and they're like, yeah, I mean, I finish up my state work job in about 2.5 hours in the morning, and then I kind of do all my other stuff for the rest of the day, and they think I'm a really good employee. There's lots of slop in there, is what I'm saying. Especially at the
And hey, great healthcare benefits too. I mean, don't knock that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna knock it, right? I mean, like most of my like investors, like you have to figure out what your highest and best use is, right? For most of my guys, it's being a doctor, doing a surgery, or a dentist, or being a lawyer, or just working at your engineering job. You don't need to doing 110% to be going after that next promotion, where you're going to get 50% more BS for only 10% more pay. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But there's always like a certain amount that you can give in terms of life energy, and hopefully you have family or hobbies too, right? Like,
right.
Yeah. And I kind of want to shift gears here too, because so you're doing the real estate stuff, and we'll get more into that. But you also started your own podcast, and kind of wanted to get into, because there, I think last year was like the most podcasts ever, ever started in 1 year. Your podcast seems to be doing really well. What made you kind of shift into like, hey, I'm also going to take this podcast route and kind of push my business via that marketing strategy?
Yeah, I mean, up until 2016 when I made the podcast, I was just another passive investor, just like the dude listening to the podcast. I would listen to all the podcasts too. I created it. I think it's popular because I created it for the right reason. Because I had all my friends ask me, well, how are you buying these properties in Birmingham? I lived in Seattle at the time. And, visit them. Like, tell me how to do this. I'm like, all right, let me tell you again. Let me waste my time because none of you guys will ever do anything. So what does Antonio do but then record the damn thing and give it to his friends as URL links for them not to listen to? So that's what I did. And then I got a lot of feedback in the beginning. Like it got kind of popular. And I was like, well, this is cool. I'm helping out a lot of people doing this. Just in the beginning, I was just talking about like turnkey rentals, buying single family homes. And then eventually, as I became over a credit investor, it moved more to syndications as I kind of fell into that more myself.
Gotcha.
But at that point, around 2016, it became a business. That was where I became the entrepreneur. That was when the vision of actually quitting my day job came into it, because I could have done this passive investing thing while I worked 2 hours of my job and read comments the rest of the day and did an hour investing at the end, right? I could have done that for 40 years and been a multi-millionaire doing that.
Yeah.
But without the podcast, I wasn't able to kind of take it to that next. There was no reason to at that point. There was not people who could benefit from the podcast. Yes.
Yeah. And you said you got a lot of feedback in the early side. What was probably, and for any of our listeners who are kind of dabbling with like a podcast idea, what were some of the feedback, some of the feedback you got in your early stages?
Yeah, I mean, people are like, yeah, I read this, or I listened to this podcast that you had. It was a good idea, and then I've been listening for 6 months now, and I just wanted to let you know I bought my first rental property, and I'm like, cool. Maybe because you thought I was sucked and you thought you could do better, right? Whatever it is, I got them to like buy their first rental property. And once you do that for investors, there's really you don't need to listen to podcasts after that point, right? You can kind of go off in their separate ways. But, for me, it's like syndication investing is all your network, right? So I became a lightning rod for accredited high net worth investors. And we kind of, stick together in a little bat cave we call my mastermind, and like this is how we find deals, right? We work together. We're the country club, right? When in a world where nobody plays golf anymore, it's a virtual country club essentially.
Yep. Yeah, everybody sits around, passes ideas around, and that's where all the best deals get made. Is your buddy's got a good deal on something, and you kind of pass that around.
Yeah, I mean, 1/3 of it is the deals, but the bigger part of it is like how do you manage your AGI and pay the least amount of taxes as possible while still managing your passive losses, playing around with real estate professional status, all this stuff like land conservation easements. Like this, there's a whole world of the strategies of what the wealthy do, infinite banking. And that was where I started. When I started my podcast, at the time, I started to pay for high-level masterminds, 25 grand a year to get into rooms with other doctors, lawyers, engineers, high net worth guys 10, 20 years ahead of me. And I saw the ways they did things. It was very different than what my parents taught. And the crazy thing is it's pretty simple to do. It's not too complicated, but none of us initially had the peer group to even get, and even see how it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is, usually how rich people make money is not how the vast majority of them make money is not rocket science. I mean, you have your like crazy brilliant entrepreneurs, but as far as like, well, no, I have a job and then I took my money and I went and did these things. I mean, it's very repeatable. It's not rocket science.
Yeah. Yep. I like boring investments. The more boring it is, that's what I like. I don't like tech stuff or like, things like that. I like boring stuff.
I think you should invest in Tesla. That'll probably get cut.
Yes. Are you kidding me? I'm just going to take your mod pizza idea. I'm going to go buy a couple mod pizzas and then turn around and
no kidding. I'm going to be saving money out of it. I'm going to be saving money from this episode on that alone. I mean, it's brilliant. Yeah. Well, hey, that's probably a good spot to, because we kind of got like, your origin, kind of your transformation from, firing your boss and now you've got your hardcore accredited investors virtual country club, right? Great information on how this is very repeatable stuff, right? So next episode, we do want to get into some of the nitty gritty and nerd out on this stuff. Going to run through our final thoughts, kind of our final, I guess, kind of a speed round lineup here. And then we'll kick off into the next episode. Sound good? So if you were to give yourself advice, if you were starting over, if you were to, transport back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what's probably the most useful thing you could tell 20-year-old Lane?
Don't take financial advice from people who are not financially free themselves.
That is another quote. You're going to see that on LinkedIn.
It typically includes your parents.
Yeah.
I may not include that one on LinkedIn, but or at least hide it from my parents.
Yeah. So Lane, for you, what's the big piece of encouragement you would give to anybody that's really trying to, step out on their own or, basically try and get that financial freedom piece going? What's the first piece of advice you would give them?
Find other people along the same path. I mean, it's a lonely world out there. People trying to achieve financial independence. Most people are just kind of buying whatever, jet skis, big houses, cars. But that stuff will come. I buy stupid stuff today, but I buy it off the cash flow that my investments make. That's the difference.
Yeah. And I think that, that is just a different mindset where it's like, when you want to go buy something, you shouldn't sell something you own to go buy it, right? Like that's the investment stock portfolio mentality of like, oh, I'm going to sell these stocks to go buy this thing. It's a lot more efficient to be like, well, I know that money's going to come in the door in the next 3 months. So I'll wait 3 months. That money will come in the door and I'm not having to sell anything. It's just coming. So next question, we're going to get off business a little bit, but if you have the day completely off, you are in Hawaii, so there's probably lots of places to go chill out, but what is your typical relaxation day where you're like, I'm not thinking about real estate, I'm not thinking about work, I'm just taking the day off?
I don't do that. I got to check my emails every day. Investors come first. I'm at a point in my business where I'm trying to outsource things for sure. But yeah, until I get to that point, I kind of like what I do. Makes a lot of money. That makes me happy. So it's challenging.
Right.
Well, it's better than rice paddy fields, right?
I
would not know. I just, personally, but
I wouldn't know either. But I hear it's super complicated and it's backbreaking.
Mark, it'd be like you back moving logs for your dad.
Oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. My dad owned a sawmill, and he listens to this podcast, so he's gonna make fun of me now. But he'd get all excited about like a new log deck coming in. I'd just be like, it looks like a boatload of backaches.
My first job was picking pineapples, and the job sucks. Right. and like for $40, $50 a day, and I'm like, this is better than that.
Yeah.
I mean, my life is great. I don't have to put on like real grown-up pants and go to work and like BS with like people at work doing politics type of stuff, right? I work with people who I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
super awesome.
I guess last one, and I'm kind of I didn't show the camera from, for my whole torso, but if you did see, you'd see I'm kind of a foodie. If Josh and I fly out there to Hawaii, where's the best local eatery? Give a shout out.
Oh, there's too many places. I'm actually gonna start to like do like a YouTube sequence on like me just running around Hawaii and eating. But I have a whole list on my website.
Oh, you have your first subscriber right here.
Send me a link. I'm definitely going to be subscribing.
So I'm on Oahu, and then I don't really care for Maui and the Big Island. They're too boring for me. I like the city. I like restaurants. I'm a foodie guy too. So if you go to simplepassivecashflow.com/retreat, I have my whole list of like restaurants on there. But yeah, you can't go wrong anywhere out here. I mean, it's a lot of fish.
At least where's the best poke in Oahu?
I'm gonna give you the funny answer, man. Like, just go to like Safeway or like the supermarket, get it for like $9 a pound. Like, you can't beat that. Like the value, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. I buy stupid stuff, but not. You can buy value.
Right.
Value. Yeah.
And this one's for Mark. Best brewery in Oahu. Where's the best local brew in Oahu?
I don't know. These guys are pretty good. Aloha beer.
Got it.
They're all pretty good.
Is that on your list as well? I'm going to be checking out the list. I mean, I'm basically canceling all the rest of my appointments today. So,
I like sushi. So it's just, you can go anywhere for sushi out here.
Yeah.
Done. Absolutely. Josh, we're doing our we'll have a wealth preservation podcast retreat
in Hawaii. Yes.
Hawaii.
I know our wives would bite off that in a heartbeat. They would say yes.
Yes, absolutely. And my wife hates flying, but she said, like, well, if you fly me to Hawaai, I'm okay with it. Like,
yeah.
Of course you are. Of course you are. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, we're going to wrap up there. Thank you so much, Lane. Super awesome story. We can't wait to get into the nitty gritty of what you do. And, this is where people can actually learn about like, okay, here's how, Lane built a pretty awesome life. How do I go build that same life? Josh, any last thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, we're just really excited because, obviously we do financial planning, we work around Wall Street and people that have 401ks and IRAs and things like that. But, as Mark and you and I have always said, like, we think real estate is an absolute cornerstone of any good financial plan. So please listen to this next episode and figure out, kind of get those tidbits from Lane and how he did it, and go out and buy that first piece of property and get started today. Don't wait. It's, the time's still ticking. So go out there and get it done.
Yep. And lastly, nothing we say here on the podcast can be taken as legal, tax, or financial advice. Not that I think any of you would listen to a podcast and base all of your decisions off of what we say. That's a bad idea. But if you heard something that is interesting that you want to explore a little bit more, please talk to a legal, financial, or tax expert. Get some real counsel and just use this as the catalyst to get you there. But definitely don't take this as God's honest truth.
Last thing, Lane, real quick, how do they get a hold of you? If you're a high investor and you want to jump into one of your syndications, is there a way to get a hold of you?
They can check out my podcast, Simple Passive Cashflow, on iTunes and Google Play. Get to know me out there. And then website, simplepassivecashflow.com. Email is lane@simplepassivecashflow.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks again, everybody. Can't wait to have Lane back on the next episode, and we'll see you all later.